We are going to talk about the paper Do Educated Leaders Matter by Timothy Besley, Jose Montalvo, and Marta Reynal Querol. There are robust findings of the importance of education in explaining economic outcomes. Education affects earnings, and also education has an impact on different measures of citizenship, like charitable giving. This paper investigates how the educational level of a political leader affects aggregate economic growth in the country during his time in office. To do so, the paper takes a sample of more than 1,000 political leaders who have been in office between 1875 and 2004. There are two problems, identification and sample selection. Since they cannot identify the fixed effects in countries that had one political leader during the period of time studied, and the sample selection problem means that leadership transitions may not be exogenous. To solve them, they analyze the subsample of leaders that exit randomly from power. And the identification problem will be solved since they won't compare all the leaders in all the countries. The article uses data of more than 1,000 political leaders between 1875 and 2004. In countries that have more than one head of state, the data identify the effective ruler based on the characteristics of the political system in place. In parliamentary regimes, the prime minister is coded as the ruler. In presidential systems, the ruler is the president, and in communist states, the effective ruler is the chairman of the party. The core variable is the graduate education. It measures whether or not a leader is highly educated. Is a dummy variable equal to 1 if the leader has a postgraduate qualification? To add randomness, the authors focus on leaders who left office because of natural death, accident, or serious illness. Their method is that they average the outcome variable over the Y years before the death of the leader. This is the pre-period, and T years after his death. This is the post-period. To implement the econometric test, they estimate the following model. After this estimation, the authors construct a chi-square test of the quality of the mean of the outcome variable in the pre and period and post period of all random transitions. The null hypothesis that they tested shows no difference in growth before and after each random test. The test verifies that the effect is the same of two consecutive leaders before and after a random transition in a particular country.
This paper contributes to a growing body of literature on how the characteristics of policymakers matter for policy outcomes. The quality dimension in political selection has been studied in a citizen candidate framework. In all cases, the return to having a more educated leader comes from the assumption that more highly educated leaders are also better citizens and are more likely to operate in the broader public interest. We will now investigate the results. The paper first investigates whether the identity of the leader matters at all, contrasting different ways of looking at this. The paper does an F-test of the hypothesis that all leaders are equally good. The leader fixed effects are equal to 0 in order to test whether the identity of the leader matters at all. The first two columns use the full sample of leaders to estimate leader fixed effect. The results show that we cannot reject the hypothesis that leader identity matters. Columns 3 and 4 focus only on leaders who die or leave office due to random causes. The F-tests find that leader identity matters. In columns 5 and 6, we focus again on the restricted sample of random transitions. In both cases, the F-test on the leader fixed effect does suggest that leader identity matters. Thus, regardless of which sample used, the paper finds that leader identity matters. Having established that leader identity matters, the paper assesses the evidence of whether leaders' educational attainment affects the quality of leadership. The paper runs the following regression. Y is the country's growth, where C includes the leader characteristics. The key variable is a measure of education, but it also includes age and tenure. Education is measured as either postgraduate degree or college degree. X is a measure of the country's average education level and whether or not the country is a democracy.
This table, column 1, suggests that having a leader with a postgraduate qualification is associated with additional growth of 0.26% per year. In column 2, the specification is run with a college education dummy instead. but the coefficient here is not significant. This suggests that it is the postgraduate qualification that matters for economic performance. Results suggest that the leader fixed effects identified can be partly attributed to observable leader characteristics such as education. Highly educated leaders do tend to perform better than their less educated counterparts. The paper also shows that there is a negative and significant effect on growth when a leader with a postgraduate qualification leaves office due to death or illness. In conclusion, the paper finds evidence for whether the identity of a leader matters for economic growth and whether more educated leaders generate higher growth. It shows that both hypotheses are correct.